Sustainability, industry issues and impacts. Today I'm going to be discussing timber and the issue of sustainability within the timber industry. Deforestation and tree clearing is one of the major causes of habitat loss for many threatened and endangered species around the world, particularly in Australia and Asia. This includes orangutans, tigers, rhinos and elephants, some of which are on the brink of extinction. Moreover, the direct impacts of clearing for timber are compounded by the fact that it brings such species into closer and more frequent contact with humans, which can lead to poaching and persecution. Australia is home to some of the most unique and magnificent natural environments in the world. Our country has vast savannas and grasslands, tropical rainforests, endangered eucalypt forests and diverse woodlands that provide shelter to our most precious threatened species. Yet Australia is one of the worst developed countries in the world for broad-scale deforestation, killing tens of millions of native animals, including threatened species, and wiping out endangered forests and woodlands. In fact, in the last 200 years, we've cleared nearly half of our forest cover. Tree clearing also has a major impact on the health of soil and water. Without trees to anchor fertile soil, erosion can occur and sweep soil into rivers, choking and polluting our waterways. Estimates suggest that 1/3 of the world's arable land has been lost through soil erosion and degradation since 1960. In Australia, sediment, nutrient and pesticide pollution from runoff is threatening the health and resilience of the Great Barrier Reef. Just 50% of Australian forests and bushlands remain intact compared to pre-European arrival. The other 50% has either been permanently destroyed and replaced with other land use, or is cleared as degraded forest and bushlands, most of which was previously cleared but is now regrowing vegetation of different ages. Australia has lost 27% of our rainforest, 19% of open forest, 11% of woodland forest, and 28% of mallee forest since European settlement began in 1788. Australia is the worst offending country in the world for mammal extinctions. 55 wildlife species plus 37 plant species have gone extinct in Australia since European settlement. In Australia, of the 1,250 plants and 39 terrestrial animal species listed as threatened, 964 plants and 286 animals have deforestation and resulting habitat fragmentation and degradation listed as threats. These include the Carnaby's cockatoo, southern cassowary, bent tree kangaroo, Cape York rock wallaby, the black flank rock wallaby, as well as the iconic koala, recently listed as vulnerable to extinction in Queensland and New South Wales. 275,000 hectares of likely koala habitat in Queensland was cleared between 2013 and 2018. So more than one Gabba stadium's worth of this threatened species habitat is cleared in Queensland every 20 minutes. Of this, 76% of likely koala habitat was cleared on land with beef production listed as its primary land use. Carbon emissions released by land clearing across Australia are equivalent to about 1/3 of the total emissions released by all coal-fired power stations in the country. Once native forest logging emissions are included, this is equivalent to at least half the carbon pollution of all Australian coal-fired power stations. Forests play a major role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and curbing harmful climate change by capturing and storing carbon. However, they become carbon sources when cut, otherwise removed or burned. Deforestation and forest degradation account for 15% of total global emissions, contributing to rising temperatures, changes in weather patterns, and increasingly frequent extreme weather events. Beyond the environmental effects, deforestation undermines the foundations of secure communities and thriving economies. Millions of people around the world depend directly on forests for hunting, gathering, and medicine. National economies rely on forests for the critical role they play in providing clean water, productive soils, and stable climate habitat for crop pollination and pests and predators, tourism, and recreation. But what does this all mean for us? And it's probably good to start with some positives. As furniture makers, teachers, and students, we're all in this together, so it's probably best that we start to consider some of the positives of working with timber and what this natural resource means for us. Timber is unique among the major materials used in construction and design, as it is the only material which stores carbon during its growth phase and continues to store that carbon for as long as it remains in a piece of furniture or a building. If a component, which is made from timber, is recycled or reused at the end of its life, the storage of that carbon continues. When there is no further use for it, it can be burnt to produce heat, electricity, or both. But by generating heat or electricity, we avoid the burden of burning fossil fuels such as natural gas, which emit greenhouse gases. In this way, it can be seen as a carbon sink, a means of locking up carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Although there will be some expenditure of energy in the felling, drying, processing and transportation of the timber, the amount of energy that is stored in the tree is greater than the energy that is used in processing and transportation. Many of us are familiar with the idea of carbon sinks, since forests themselves have often been described this way. This begs the question, wouldn't it be better just to leave the trees in the forest and store the energy that way? But not all forests are equal. If they're not harvested, the rate of carbon sequestration decreases. In general terms, trees have a similar life expectancy to humans. Yes, trees can stand for hundreds of years, but it's their peak life of 80 years, which is the general length of time a tree will be rapidly sequestering carbon. The tree reaches a point whereby absorption of the carbon decreases, and this is where research has shown that a sustainable forest management strategy involves the verification and harvesting of only the trees which have reached their peak life. This provides us with a sustained yield of timber, fibre or energy from the forest, avoids depletion by excessive harvesting, and helps to maintain the health of the soil and water. When a fully matured tree is felled, the crown of the tree, which has been blocking a large amount of the sunlight from reaching the forest floor, leaves a large opening for the sun, which then helps the seeds, which have been dropped by that tree throughout its entire life, to germinate and grow and take its place. But how then do we ensure that we are operating sustainably? How do we ensure that the decisions that we make are guided and are in the best interest of our natural ecosystem? Well, we must certainly not support the use of illegally harvested timber or rainforest species. There's too much evidence to show what happens when mass logging and the drive for people to use these timbers occurs, and we have massive ecosystems just disappear before our eyes. Selecting and using certified and sustainable and managed plantation timbers are our best hope. The following organisations are worth taking note of. PEFC, or the Program for Endorsement of Forest Certification Schemes. The PEFC is the world's largest forest certification system, which seeks to protect forests by promoting sustainable forest management through certification. Forest certification requires a delicate balance. The requirements must be strict enough to ensure that the sustainable management of a forest is socially just, ecologically sound, and economically viable. However, they must also be attainable for forest owners, from the large to the small. And there's further information available on their website. The Australian Forestry Standard, which is now known as Responsible Wood, is Australia's active certification scheme and is internationally recognised through the Program for Endorsement of Forest Certification, PEFC. To date, around 11.4 million hectares of forests in Australia have been certified under this scheme, including plantations and native forests. And again, there's further information there on their website. The Forest Stewardship Council certification is a stakeholder-owned system for promoting responsible management of the world international forests. The FSC is a global, not-for-profit organisation that monitors standards for responsible forest management practices and accredits independent third-party organisations who certify forest managers and forest product producers to FSC standards. Fine Timber Tasmania. The Fine Timber Tasmania Chain of Custody is an innovative and credible program that guarantees that exotic Tasmanian timbers have been legally sourced from a sustainably managed forest and represents a responsible purchase decision. This is something that Fine Timber Tasmania guarantee. A word of warning about certification frameworks. With the consumer being increasingly environmentally aware, many companies go to great lengths to ensure their timber is sustainably sourced and properly certified. Some unscrupulous logging companies have found ways to insert illegally sourced product into the certified supply chain, usually without the manufacturers or the consumers being aware. For example, a recent case involving IKEA was reported in the media. Whilst IKEA acted quickly to rectify the situation, it highlights the need for both manufacturers and consumers to remain vigilant. But how do we actually measure the impacts? And this brings us to the topic of life cycle analysis. And it's a fairly large topic, so we're going to examine that as the topic of the next lecture.